this is my understanding of what a DAC is versus a DAO. DAOs are vote run, right? And the at the very outset, you put in like the whatever algorithms are controlling, the underlying chain. That is put in by a founding team, and then essentially it becomes all the voting tokens or governance tokens are distributed at that point, whenever it becomes a DAO, to members of the community in some proportion that's predetermined, and then those governance tokens are not held centrally with the founding team anymore. Presumably, the community is larger than the founding team. This is why it's so hard to make a DAO at the outset of anything. You can't do that, right? It's really hard. You can't even get a bank account. So you really have to have a period of time between founding and becoming a DAO. So otherwise, you're essentially a DAO of like 3 people, which is honestly how like a lot of co-ops end up existing, but you're not fundamentally a DAO. So then the tokens are distributed, and then anything that is done beyond ordinary, validation or whatever it is, like everything that's done beyond the central consensus methodology, is run by vote. So people put in a proposal, etc. For this, for a DAC, and originally this is a concept that was designed to be implemented earlier than a DAO. So all of the governance questions and issues are algorithmically controlled at outset. So there isn't like this point where you have a central authority that is governing what happens and then figuring out how to do the distribution, et cetera. That's all put in through a series of smart contracts at the outset. And then what thing for most governance actions, you don't need necessarily consensus. Those are all algorithmically predetermined. And the point behind it is to have a separate sort of governance control so that you have compliance. And the compliance is to try and ensure that the corporate structure that protects liability that remains intact the entire time, right? So there's basically this external governance function that is operating, and there's nothing that I've seen that shows that there's any sort of liability protection for DACs beyond DAOs, right? Even the DAO LLC is just an LLC that allows a DAO structure to be held within it, right? So it's just an LLC where you say like, how many founders are there, list the founders, or another option is essentially like a DAO, right? So there's like the DAO LLC is predicated entirely on being an LLC. The DAC is predicated on being a DAO more than a corporation. So while there's a lot more control, like there's a lot more recognition of compliance issues and things that you need to do to maintain a certain amount of liability protection, I don't have any knowledge at this point that that protection is actually there, right? So I think they're trying to do some stuff, but to my knowledge, it doesn't actually exist at this point in time. It's just another attempt to try and figure out how to make these two worlds meet, have something that's decentralized, but also have something that provides some sort of governance, compliance, and liability protection.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do with a lot of. I thought that came before DAO too.
Yeah, it's
That was
interesting.
not my understanding of it. My understanding is that everybody's trying to move closer to this idea of because people have realized, right? Like this is why I get DAOs calling me, right? Help, I'm worried about a liability issue with, X, Y, and Z other people who run nodes. I don't know them, but there's a lot of politics involved in DAOs, right? It's not about just people minding their business and voting when they need to vote, and they vote according to whatever they think is best and go home. That's very idealized. That's not what happens in DAOs, right? Those of us who've actually, experienced DAOs, you have a lot of politicization. And you have people who are aggressively either courting people to buy their votes, or they are threatening to withhold votes from other actions in order to make something that they want happen. So that kind of political jockeying is not really what I think was originally envisioned by having a DAO. I was not there with the Slockit team and what they were considering or whatever, so I don't know what the very early DAOs were looking at, but I don't think it's the. I think the idea was everybody sort of working towards this common goal, but it turns out, like everything else, right? If you've ever tried to experience, an idealized metaverse, everybody's idea of what's best is not the same. So that's why you get these problems, is that even if everybody is acting in what they think is the best interests of the company, or the best interests of the organization, or the best interests of the project, or whatever it is, they have different ideas of what the best interests are. And then people get very entrenched in making sure that they're really sure that what they are doing is the best thing possible. So that's how it devolves into this sort of political internecine warfare. And that's not great, right? So now people are coming up with new alternatives to how can this be more like people just voting and not really thinking as much about whether or not their full agenda is being passed or whatever. I don't think that we're there yet, but I love that people are trying.
Yeah. Alexandra, do you think that the notion of a DAO ends up often experiencing the same problems that any committee does, which is it gets so bound up in this political stuff, that work can't really get done? And it seems like a DAC is the idea that it's the smart contract that's at the center, not so much people at the center, and that makes things move more smoothly. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that might be true. I mean, I think that what you're saying on both parts is most likely true, right? So people have their own views of the world, and when there's opposition, most often people become more entrenched in their own view rather than trying to see if their view should change, right? So that's just what happens, especially when you don't know the person, or you don't really have any sort of affiliation whatsoever. You become more welded to whatever it is that you want done. So the this is the problem of any organizational structure as humans have evolved, right? We end up with hierarchies simply because it's so hard to gain consensus. This is the reason that basically, unless you're a Swiss canton, you've not actually seen pure democracy, because it's chaos, right? And the problem with general rule, everybody gets a vote without tiering that particular thing, is that you end up with people who end up to get the most votes. You end up always going down to the lowest common denominator, right? So instead of getting people to rise to the level of decision making that needs to happen, you end up having more people drop down to the lowest common reason for making a decision, or people trying to make decisions and circumvent the decision making process, which I think is probably what's going to happen as we see more DACs and things like that. What's going to happen is, instead of people arguing over votes, they're going to argue over whether or not that particular algorithm in the smart contract is applicable, right? That's what happens when you start to put choke points on whether, the farther back you allow more voting, people continue to reach before that. So this is the idea of, this thing should be decided, like everybody vote for this referendum. But then what happens? Then the argument is, well, does it even need to go to referendum? Maybe we can figure out how to tweak the language so that it doesn't actually go to referendum. So what ends up happening is people stop seeing those votes, instead of finding a mechanism where people can come to agreement easier or in a less contentious way. What ends up happening is the ability to vote starts getting removed. And that would be the concern that I would look at, is what kind of control does anyone have, or is there somebody who has like a majority holder of tokens or something like that? Is there a group of people that can circumvent the voting process altogether? And for this would be the smart contract. So it's basically, could they force down decisions? And I don't know, but I'd watch out for.
I would say
Yeah.
yes.
Go
This
ahead.
is time teaching young minds every day. I think that's absolutely what Lady Day DAO's about. That's absolutely about what everything that is the ethos of what we are trying to accomplish. If you look at everything that's going on, you have first of all, there ain't no thing as such thing as a DAO before there was a guild, and after that, we have MDAOs, we have mini DAOs, we have DAOs, we have DAX. I think all that is trying to align with the fact that we know that we need to have um a outline, and that outline is going to be the smart contract, which is in place in order for us to be able to have a trustless system. And in order to have that trustless system, it has to be something that is agreed upon and has to be worked upon together. Like that's you're right when it comes to people with the different voting powers and stuff like that. But that's only if you incorporate that into the system. If that's what's in the smart contract in the jump. I would just make sure that we keep on doing what we're doing, because I mean I'm currently involved in a whole lot of different DAOs and different things that I try to stay abreast upon. When it comes to the ever changing technology as we step forth in tomorrow. You know,
Yeah.
we believe in the 5x5. I don't know if anybody understands that, but it's like 5 years from now, where are we gonna be at?
Right.
We setting the precedents right now, and everything that we're doing, and for us to sit here and we need that contradictions of thought processes in order for us to have a decision, because nothing can be solved without having the different minds that are able to have to look at a problem and have different opinions about that problem, and then come to a decision based on the voting process of the governance we initiated from the jump. So this is time teaching young minds every day. I'm seeing my mic. Thank you very much, and I'm glad that you got upon Alexander to explain that, because I definitely can't to have things come out my mouth the way they're in my brain. So
Well, thank you so much for bringing up the question. I think it was a really interesting discussion, and I'm certainly bookmarking some things to go back and look at as a result of that. Donna, you've been really patient, and I wanted to allow you to ask a question or make a comment.
We can't hear Donna, but we can introduce Frank in the meantime. Hi, Frank.
Hey, it's been busy. I've been busy, so I just came in and caught the conversation on DAOs. Yeah, so my name's Franklin. I'm getting much more deeper into the whole metaverse, and I've been doing a lot of work with Superworld and virtual real estate. I'm getting very much inside that space, so I'm very much clued up on all things metaverse at this point in time. So yeah, nice to meet everybody.
good to meet you. And I want to know, everybody know, you all do know this for a fact, right? That whatever you are invested in right now, that is probably having a DAO behind it. I mean, being as 100% as I can with you, and let you understand what a DAO is. If you have any of this cryptocurrency, there is a DAO that controls that. FYI.
Okay,
Good
we got
point.
it. We got it. So, um, quick
Right.
question for
Can you hear me
Donna.
now?
Can you hear us? No, we
Can
can't
you
hear
hear?
you. You're like inside a well. Maybe like if you are driving, maybe in a minute or two. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening with the Super Bowl and NFTs and all of the ads that were related to crypto in the Super Bowl. Jeanette, you want to start with that?
Well, it's just really interesting to me that the NFL gave free NFTs to all of the Super Bowl attendees, which, I mean, they should get something because those tickets cost an enormous amount of money. But it's interesting that they are offering a free commemorative ticket as an NFT, with the understanding that people who go to the Super Bowl tend to collect those tickets and save them. And there were also a couple of crypto based ads in the game itself, which to me shows, hey, this is definitely hitting the mainstream. Those ads are not cheap. And so it was really interesting to see the NFL sort of jump all in this way. And I kind of wish Carlos was here because I'm sure he would have had something to say about this because he's an avid sports NFT collector. But I was wondering, have any of you seen the ads at the Super Bowl, and what did you think?
I saw the ad. If you can call that an ad, if you can call the Coinbase one an ad, but I think it was genius, I have to say.
Would you
And
describe it
I
for
don't.
us?
Okay, yeah, I can describe it. So basically, it was it was just a blank screen with a QR code floating on the screen. And I think what that kind of said to people, I mean, there was a few other ads. I didn't see all of them, but I saw that one. What it showcased is that, okay, if you know what a QR code is, you know exactly what you're going to do when you see that ad. So it's like it targeted everybody that actually knows how to use a QR code. So those who do went there. So it was a very targeted ad and a very, very interesting way of doing things. So I wouldn't have thought of doing it that simply, but they did it that simply and crashed the Coinbase site. So
Yeah.
that I think that was interesting.
And
Can
they
you can you
paid
hear me now?
14 million for it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Donna, we can hear you. And they paid
Okay. Well,
14 million for that
yeah.
ad.
Well,
But
I think
they paid 14 million, but 20 million people used the ad.
yes.
20 million.
Yes. The problem with that is that let's pretend 20 million people use the ad. Anybody in real life that's ever used Coinbase, they experienced the same outages that every single person that ever has used Coinbase gets when the markets are busy. And that was the worst advertisement for Coinbase they could have ever had, which is what you get now is what you're going to get when the markets are busy. No access, site down.
Adrian, do you think that the ad, because all right, I see what you mean, and you're right, because it did cause clogging, and people just it didn't give people a good experience of how it is when an exchange is going crazy like that. But psychologically, it's what they did is they wanted to get into the minds of people so that people talk about it. I think that was one of the main things. Get people talk about this so that people will spread it.
I
Over time, people will keep on talking about that.
I think it depends on what you want people to say. Like, would you rather have 1 million people tell everybody, "Wow, I went onto the Coinbase thing and they offered me, personal service to open my account and promised that, if all the paperwork, I'm just making this up, if all the paperwork were done within, 24 hours, that I would get, making this up again, $10 worth of free crypto." Right? Or would you rather have 5 million people say, "Wow, I tried to get on that Coinbase thing and it didn't work. And now I've spoken to a few friends that go on Coinbase and use it, and they always have problems too."
So you bring up an exceptional point. There's a couple things. Number one, it trained 20 million people to click on QR codes, which, as those of us who've been around for a while know, you don't click mystery links because you
That
never know
is
what they're going to
totally
do.
true. I mean, people were like, who does that? Why
Who?
would people doing that? Those are all the
Because
people who are
because
going to invest in scams. Like, they're like,
because
it's terrible.
they don't know, right? And so you've got the two different sides of this whole psychological play. One, the site is out, which triggers FOMO in people who don't understand that the site is out is not a good thing. And then the people who are used to the site being out are like, it's down again. So you're getting everybody talking about Coinbase. And also you're getting all of these newcomers who watch Super Bowl but don't know crypto going, what is that? Click. and weren't they giving away like $15 or something?
$15 of free Bitcoin if you sign up for the account, which they had for a long time, something
Right.
of that kind. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you've got a lot of people that are sitting at home going $15, that's a meal. So, but
in
did
Bitcoin.
they know they were getting $15? I didn't see the ad. It took me forever just to get the halftime show. I had to wait for the NFL to post
No,
it.
it's just a QR code floating on the screen.
So they trained 20 million people to randomly scan a QR code that had no information about it. Great security. Oh my goodness, especially in crypto. I mean, come on, people. We tell everybody all the time, don't click links. Oh my God, especially in DMs, let alone a plain QR code with nothing on a blank screen.
But
could
I
have
was such a
spent
I
I
would
was
say
such
So
a dingbat.
the thing that I thought was really cute, though, that there were a lot of people that were talking about it, but the thing that it was super retro. So it's like a move into the future. They had like this Pong aspect where it was like slowly floating around the screen and bouncing off the edges. So it was very retro. So it was sort of like, hey, retro people, move into the future. But the thing I didn't understand, aside from that crazy thing of who clicks links, my husband came over and he's like, oh, should we do this? I'm like, no, it's a terrible idea because it could be corrupted. You have no idea. But the thing that I thought was like, stupid is they are spending a lot of time and money trying to roll out this thing called Coinbase One. And that is like, there's a certain insurance program that's attached to it, which by the way isn't worth it. But it's their whole new rollout. They spent $14 million instead of promoting that to people who already know who they are and are more likely to upgrade it. They spent it on just getting their name out when I didn't understand why they didn't use that to promote the big thing that they've spent a lot of time and money already trying to promote. It didn't seem to make sense to me because they're just trying to onboard people onto their like entry level product, and that's not necessarily what they've been doing otherwise. So I thought it wasn't necessarily a great use.
But it's 2 days later and we're still talking about it. And the media is still coming out with articles about it. So as a play, as long as they spell your name right, it's good press. Kind of that is a marketing tactic. And they did a great room this morning on women in NFTs with Reese Witherspoon and a bunch of other amazing women on Twitter Spaces this morning. So to roll out Coinbase NFTs. So I think Coinbase is going after the mainstream market. And honestly, I think crypto.com is a much better play for newbies. It's much simpler and the support is 1,000 times better. But Coinbase is the blue chip name that, most people who don't know crypto have at least heard of Coinbase. So
It's really interesting too because they put out a message to people who got that cited down that says, well, that was more popular than we thought. We need a quick timeout, but don't worry, we'll email you when things are back to normal. So on the one hand, yeah, they were not prepared, I guess, for the app to crash, or maybe they expected it to build FOMO, but they were prepared with messaging that was very specific to, I think, build that FOMO among people who got that message.
And, it would not have been that difficult for them to put up a, load balanced, cloud based front end lead gen name, email, cell phone number, and then crash and collect 20 million users.
Well, I think they must have, if they're telling people
If they said they're going to email, then how?
I assume they captured the email somehow.
So, well, you would think, but I don't think they did. And so that's the interesting thing is somebody wasn't thinking ahead on that one thing. Like a skinny little opt-in would be super easy to load balance around the world on cloud servers that can automatically scale and capture all those people. And then if the app crashed, you still have all those people.
Well, I'll have to trot over to Ad Age later today and find out the straight skinny because I'm sure they talked about that in the advertising trade rags.
Okay, let's look at the eToro, the Fly Me to the Moon. who actually thought that was a really good commercial?
Nobody my age would have responded.
So that's like the opposite end of the spectrum, right? The QR code floating across the screen versus fly me to the moon with a bunch of people flying around.
Well,
Uh,
it's hilarious because QR codes, those of us who've been in a while remember when I can't remember his name. I'm seeing his picture his face in my head, but his funny thing, and he was, a kind of blockchain educator kind of person, but he said every time you use internet marketer, every time you use a QR code, a kitten dies. So those of us who've been in for 15 years, every time we see a QR code, we're like, oh, do I scan it? A kitten's gonna die if I scan it. But the fly me to the moon seems like it's trying to recruit my mom, and that she's not, she's going to like the song and she's going to sing along to it, but I don't think she's going to react and take action. So I don't think it was
It's so
I don't think it was
interesting because
effective.
it's all mass media driven. For eToro, they sponsor sports teams, soccer teams globally. They put their names on stadiums, and they're doing something that's really kind of targeting more like boomers and Gen Xers, etc. Where most of the other crypto companies are trying to recruit the younger generation. So they have a very different strategy.
I thought the Larry David thing was hilarious and kind of emotionally spot on. I was wondering how the rest of you felt about the whole this thing's never going to take off ad. Did anybody see that? It started with Larry David, and he's like looking at the wheel, and he's like, "Nah, it's not going to go anywhere." And it went through all these different technologies through the years.
Yeah, I saw that briefly. That was very good.
I thought it really dealt with this issue of every time a big technology comes, there's always the naysayers. And like a lot of people have said to me, well, I think this crypto business is BS. And I say, yeah, that internet thing, it's not going anywhere. That's often the response that I give them. And I thought that the Larry David ad kind of captured that pretty well.
Yeah.
Gabo, you've been, I don't know if it's Gabo or Gabo, you've been patient. I wonder if you had a question. Did you want to ask us some?
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt because you were so.
No, go ahead. This is for you.
Oh, well, thank you. I was just curious about how DeFi was mixed with the NFTs and the DAOs, because I understand DeFi is decentralized finance, right?
Oh, well, we focus on all of these opportunities and business models in the space. But if you start to look at what's happening in the NFT space, it's a digital asset class in essence. And, Alexandra's going to jump in with all the regulatory issues related to this. But the bottom line is that most of the NFTs ventures, so not just the regular drop, and you've seen a lot of them on the Clubhouse, but the actual ventures being built, they start to employ DeFi principles in it. Namely, the first one that we've seen in almost all of them is staking. So, how can you stake your NFTs to actually increase the value in the economy? The next one is then the lending protocols. So, when you think of DeFi, it's being integrated very quickly inside the NFTs venture launches, and it's being also integrated with all the traditional crypto launches that we've seen over the last few years.
So do you mean there will be, I mean, it's a similar process, the creation of an NFT than the lending business process?
Well, okay, so if you think of creating an NFTs drop, right, and you're creating a venture associated with that, it could be a media venture, it could be a consumer related company. At the end of the day, they're going to start thinking through DeFi principles, namely staking, creating of loans, creating of financial products that can help the economy grow, and you're seeing these two merging together. And then DAOs are just used as sort of the legal underpinnings of the space, which we discussed at length at the beginning. All the different formats of DAOs, the DAX, the DAOs, the decentralized autonomous entities, etc. They're more focused on the legal structure of what's going on. And the DeFi principles are creating the business models in addition to the NFTs business models for the venture itself.
And is there an example or a case where people have created NFTs for lending purposes or
Yeah,
for buying any asset?
we did. We showcased something called Culties, which was last 2 weeks ago at the virtual Infiom Salon, and they basically launched an NFT drop. They did an NFT drop back then of these really cute Culties characters. But once you own a character, they're launching a DeFi company that's so sort of like a um, social network driven DeFi protocol. There, if you own a culti, one of these, original ones, one of these NFTs, you're going to have special privileges in that DeFi protocol. So that would be really kind of doing an NFT drop in order to launch a DeFi company. Some people have launched play to earn games with NFTs in them, and they're allowing people to stake their NFTs inside the game. That would be incorporation of a DeFi with an NFT inside a venture that's, gaming venture. So it really depends on what the business model is, how you want to add NFT drops to that business model, how it can help you grow your audience and grow your business, and then what DeFi type business models you want to integrate in order to maximize the value of your business.
Okay, got it. Thanks so much.
I was wondering too, one of the things that came up in our newsletter this past Sunday was the notion that someone bought a Florida home for $653,000 through an NFT sale. And I was wondering too, Frank, since you've been tooling around in Superworld and have been dealing with virtual real estate, I've been looking at property buying as something where blockchain could ultimately vastly simplify that process and make it happen a lot faster, but I didn't really envision NFTs as the way that would happen. So I'm just throwing this out for the crowd. What do you think about buying property via NFTs?
Right. Yeah, I did see that actually through Proppy. I think it was really, really good. I think what it is everything is now moving towards tokenization. So um, the whole thing about buying properties, the barrier to entry, having to get a mortgage. I know that there's still paperwork to be done, tokenizing property, but I think the process is going to allow a lot more people to potentially purchase property using either crypto methods or fiat methods. I'm not really sure whether that um, whether whether it was purchased in Ethereum. I don't really know what it was purchased in, how it went through, but I do know that that is one of the areas that I'm very much interested in, especially when connected to the virtual real estate, having the actual real estate and then having the virtual real estate around that property to build experiences and utility for the property, which potentially in the future brings up the price of the actual property.
Yeah, it was done on ETH, in ETH. But I think one thing that I found really interesting about it is, we look at DeFi and we look at different blockchain technologies as potentially enabling more people to participate in this market. But in this case, it was an auction where you had to have the starting bid of $650,000
For a
in your wallet.
$250,000 house, by the way.
Oh, really? I didn't
Oh,
realize
yes.
that.
Yes.
Tell
So
us about that.
the house is worth $250,000. The idea, it was a flex. It's like, I'm going to go buy an ape. I'm going to buy the
Oh,
first house on the blockchain. But, it's not really the first house on the blockchain. I mean, they've sold houses for Bitcoin before. And in Wyoming, they put real estate titles on blockchain for the last 4 years, I think. So it's not, for me, it's more of a like a supply chain procedural efficiency, because you're going to have fewer quiet title actions. You're not going to have duplicate paperwork. There's one NFT that represents that one property, and that's that. And so your title insurance should go down if we did this nationwide. We won't have as many court actions trying to settle things. It does make that part of it a lot cleaner. And with the mortgages that are being developed in DeFi, it's quite easy for a number of people to look at a house. The issue is going to be when somebody says this house is worth $650,000, but all you have to go do and look at Zillow and go 250. Okay, it's somewhere around there, maybe not 250, but it's definitely not 650. So, looking at these DeFi plays for mortgages where it's almost like crowdfunding. I mean, that would be, and somebody did do that, and then he got in trouble because it wasn't actually a legally registered platform. They weren't registered with FINRA to be a crowdfunding platform, but they were doing real estate in California. And the idea was, as real estate investors, you could then invest in a number of different properties on lease to own. And then when the person bought it, you were automatically given a certain amount of percentage gain. So it was supposedly a secure investment in real estate. But I think that you're going to see banks, because settlement processes and wire fees and things like that are much more, they take more time. So I think that you're going to see banks start doing these NFT transactions with mortgages, like a real mortgage, but they're going to settle it in crypto in seconds, instead of having to issue a wire, go through the bank, get it in before the wire cut off, or it's got to go the next day. I think it's going to speed everything up once that becomes the norm.
And I think this particular platform, um, Adrian, just as you pointed out, it's called Proppy. They took a flat fee for the transaction, but they also are planning to allow buyers to take out mortgages through its technology in USDC, so the stable coin that are pegged to the US dollar. So they're already working on.
Proppy's been around for a really long time. I know one of the advisors. I mean, a really long time, like 10 years.
Yeah, they've been, it's hard to kind of get this done in the US. So I'm glad that it's moving forward. We had a presenter that was, I think, moving forward with Belize or one of the other island countries at the virtual Infiom Salon last year, that was also working on sort of, basically moving the whole real estate transactional process you're describing onto the blockchain. So,
Would you like to know why Belize, which
why?
is one of my favorite domiciles for
Why?
asset protection? In Belize, if you have a corporation or LLC or their version of that, if anybody wants to sue you, they have to deposit with the court 50% of whatever they're asking for and hire a Belize lawyer to sue you. 99.9% of the time, that is the cock block that just ends it all. They just won't do it
Would be nice
because
to have this here.
it would be nice, right? If you're going to say you owe me $2 million, you have to put $1 million down with the court. Well, how serious are you? How much do you think you're going to win? It really does remove any, the issue in the United States is everyone has the constitutional right to be sued. Like, you can be sued for anything and it can be frivolous and you still have to defend it. In Belize, they're like, how serious are you that you think you're going to win? Because if you think you're going to win, you should be able to get a loan for this.
It's so interesting because they were working with the government itself to
Hmm.
not just, deal with, connecting the real estate transactions, land ownership to, on the blockchain, but they were also working on paying all the government employees with their token, in kind of tokenizing the whole economy, which is what happens when you tokenize real estate.
Right, which would make things, you have this double-edged sword, right? So we have this massive global counterfeiting problem. And I think the US $100 bill is like the number one most counterfeit thing in the world. And then we also have, I think the last report was like 23% of SWIFT transactions were fraudulent. So you've got all this problem in the current infrastructure. But then you have everybody going, but they can just mint up a new token. And I'm like, okay, so we just have to teach people how to double check contract addresses. Like this seems like it would be much easier. Obviously, we still have, some fraud in blockchain and in crypto, but that's because they're hacking the human. These same humans would be just as susceptible for getting their debit card hacked and their account wiped out. So, I think we have to look at everything from a practical standpoint and say, look, transparency is much better on the blockchain. You can track and trace everything. I do love ENS because once we get it to the point where we can have like readable wallet addresses for people, it's going to make life so much easier. So then the tracking and the tracing of the transactions will be much, much easier to do. You won't have to be a forensic person who can, properly not what do you call it, flip the numbers around when you've got 28 hexadecimals for a wallet address.
So interesting. What's happened with Super Bowl and NFTs and crypto in general, how it's, really going mainstream right now. And, this real estate discussion ties right into it. Going back to your first point, Jeanette, when you were talking about Super Bowl giving all of the attendees an NFT, what's really striking to me is that even though NFL is trying to figure this out and trying to, get into the space, they didn't really offer any sort of incentives attached to these NFTs, or at least I'm not aware of them. Like, do you belong to the Super Bowl get tickets first club when you own this NFT? What kind of a benefit are you getting other than a memento from this particular one?
I think it's a memento, just like when you get a backstage pass. I mean, I have hauled around a collection of badges from events from my entire life. And it would be much easier if those were all collectible NFTs. So POAPs are a thing. The NFL is getting in on it. And I think everybody's going to start to do it. Like I've been working on I can give away I can give away a POAP for Foxy's because people are
Yay!
here. Oh my goodness.
I
So
want to be part of the giveaway.
Me too.
I'm going to give everybody on stage, and I will give the next 3 people who ask questions. I'm so excited that I
Yay!
totally forgot.
Thank you.
You heard it here first. Better ask questions. Yeah, so tell us about Foxy's. You're going to talk about it tomorrow, but just tell us a little preview about it.
So Foxy's, I'm having to scroll through. I had so many opt-ins when I was on a Twitter thing this morning. Foxy's is a 10K generative art project that then leads into a trading card game where you collect all of the same color in every tail or all of the same tail in every color. And that gives you a bonus award of a 4Foxy, which are like the ancestral magic ones because they have access to every genetic mutation, every accessory now and in the future. They also breed litters. So when we open our breeding engine, that's when the magic happens. Like CryptoKitties, you put 2 in, you get 1 out. If you have a 4Foxy, you get a litter out. So that could be anywhere between 5 and 8, and they could be absolutely anything. So that's really super fun. But every time you breed a Foxy, it kicks off a scholarship for a woman or a girl in blockchain development and entrepreneurship. And we have a metaverse university, so we can educate people around the world. And we're in talks with several different universities to actually build that out even farther to be accredited degrees. But we have some of the most amazing people teaching. We have a dean of education who's wrangling all of the instructors at the moment, and we're putting together the curriculum to get approved to be accredited. So we may or may not make it through the accreditation process. It depends on the red tape involved with the U.S. Department of Education. So just throwing it out there, if anybody's got a hookup, that would be awesome. So that's what we're doing, and we have some amazing, fun surprises throughout the roadmap that we haven't announced yet. But it's a year-long roadmap because my current project, the Billionaire Zombies Club, we went so fast, so hard, and dropped every 2 weeks and did something exciting every 2 weeks. And we trained our audience that every 2 weeks was normal. But that was literally 20-hour days for 2 months. So I wanted to make this a much more reasonable timeline, make sure we could hit our milestones and deadlines and maybe get things done earlier, as well as really bring in a lot of collaborators. So we have a ton of people that are helping and taking on responsibilities already. So it's a labor of love. And it's through our nonprofit, Digital Legacy Foundation, which is also the fiscal sponsor of Crypto Vixens, which is my nonprofit project to inspire women to join founding teams as advisors or co-founders, regardless of technical expertise. So I've been doing that since 2017. So this is kind of more play on that.
That is
more
so
women.
cool. That is so freaking cool.
Thank you. And I did not create the Foxy's art. That is my son's best friend's girlfriend. She drew that when she was 17. And I'm like, oh my goodness, here's what I need. She's literally right now making 3 more accessories so I can do the generative part. But I did all the technology and the backgrounds and the branding and the websites and everything. So I did everything else.
I love it. I love the idea that, it's really helping young girls and women get into the space. We're in the process of, largest wealth transfer in our lifetime for sure. And if we don't create these onboarding systems that you're working on at the moment, you can't really expect any of this to happen in the direction that we're all hoping for. So I love this idea.
It's even more than that. So we have female founders who are not being funded, and they're only getting 2% of the funding when they're generally way less risky. So as part of the Foxy's University with the entrepreneurship, we have an incubator, an accelerator, and a grants program. But the other piece of this is when you have a blockchain company, you are scouring the planet for developers, and they are few and far between that are quality. So I decided probably about a year and a half ago that I'm just going to start growing my own. And then this idea came to me and I said, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And so this is why we're doing the education, and it's multi-platform. So we're not just Solidity. We're not just Rest. We're definitely going the gamut for the different opportunities that are available. Like there's for gaming, you really need to know REL on Chromia. If you have really high transaction volumes, you need to know Rust for Solana. If you want to have the most functionality, you need to know Solidity. So there's all these different blockchains, but we're just desperate for developers. And we have so many women around the world that are just brilliant developers in mobile or web apps or whatever they're doing. They just haven't dived into blockchain yet. And this is how we're going to pull them in.
Hey, Fox, we're almost wrapping up. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I saw this Foxy and I couldn't not come up.
Yeah, it's awesome. You can see her
Yay.
tomorrow at the virtual Infiom Salon, which we're hosting, in video format on Zoom. And if you just click on our website there, you can sign up. It's a free event on Eventbrite. And then Adrian's going to have a follow-on discussion about Foxy's, and Earn TV was here earlier. Pascal's going to be there. Midas is going to be our third presenter. So really top tier companies, and then David Benjamin with ability to ask questions from people on a web page and create a community on each web page on the web, which is kind of fascinating. So come join us tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. PST for the salon, and then we have a follow-on Clubhouse discussion at 1:30 p.m. And I want to thank Jeanette for moderating this, and Adrian for giving us a preview, and Frank and all of our panelists for showing up today. That was really fun.
Thanks, and I want to thank all of you for coming up with great questions. This was a fun discussion, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
I'm handing out POAPs.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you. I want one.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
We'll pick a panel. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.